New Wave Community Media.
Before we start, a note to our listeners. The content of this podcast is based on our opinions and experiences. While New Wave Community Media strives to offer valuable insights and information, we are not medical or professional advisors. Any advice or suggestions presented here should not be considered a substitute for seeking guidance from qualified professionals. We encourage you to consult with appropriate experts regarding any specific concerns or issues you may have. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the podcast. Nothing of me is original. I am the combined effort of everyone I've ever known. Chuck Palahniuk, American novelist. From New Wave Community Media in Oakland, California, I'm Jen K. Ward, and this is the Digital Sanity Podcast, dedicated to helping you be online without losing your mind. Nothing of me is original. I am the combined effort of everyone I've ever known. Chuck Palahniuk, American novelist. Welcome to the show. Social media can have really negative effects. And a lot of us are questioning, I know I'm one of the people, whether or not these platforms support personal fulfillment and professional success. Today is going to be interesting, to say the very least. You're in for a treat and some great insight, because in this episode, you're going to meet Eva Amin. She's going to weigh in on this. Now, what she achieves in her life is remarkable. She was already a youth activist and an up-and-coming entrepreneur. I mean, wow. She is a marketing major at Fordham University, but she began her public speaking career at the age of 14. And then when she was 17, she gave her very popular 2022 TEDx talk, and it was called "Social Media Isn't Bad, You're Just Using It Wrong," in which she argues that social media isn't bad in and of itself, but that it must be used judiciously, to say the least, and in the service of positive goals. Has Eva's stance changed since that TED Talk? Now we're into 2024. A lot has happened in those years, in parentheses, AI. So let's hear it straight from her. Eva, welcome to the show. So honored to have you here.
Hi, it's so nice to see you, and thank you for having me.
So how are you? What have you been up to today?
I'm good. I went to hot yoga this morning, and then just kind of relaxed up until now. So it's been a good day.
That sounds awesome. Eva, so that we can get to know you a little bit better, I'm going to do a hippy-dippy-trippy visualization exercise with you, okay? Imagine it's raining outside. You walk into a cafe. You smell, the aroma of fresh brewed coffee. You hear people having cozy conversation. People gathered on sofas and around tables. It's the kind of atmosphere where you just feel so at home. And you notice this party of three having a conversation at one of the back tables. And as you focus in on them, it seems like everything around you disappears. And you're like, they seem interesting. I feel compelled to walk up. And as you approach, I'm wondering who these people are. If you had to pick three people from history or ordinary folk that you would like to have coffee with at that table, who were they? And why them?
I think the first person I would choose is probably my grandfather on my mom's side, just because he passed when I was 2 years old. So I didn't really get to know him. And the relationship I have with my dad's parents is really good, and I've learned so much from them. So I'd love to sit down with my mom's dad and just know about his past and know about his values. And I think like talking to them also makes you understand your parents more. So I think I'd very much value a conversation with him. The second person, okay, this might sound silly, but the second person is probably just like one of the first people alive, because I feel like I have so many questions about like how our society came to be. And I just kind of want to know what like life was like back then. I know you can like read it in textbooks and stuff, but it's so much different when you're actually talking to that person. So yeah, that'd definitely be the second person. And then the third person, I mean, this person's still living, but definitely Michelle Obama, because she's a very powerful woman, and I've always looked up to her, and I would just love to sit down and learn about her experiences and her challenges in life and how she came to be. So,
Well, those are some powerful picks. And, speaking of powerful picks and powerful people, I would include you. I'm so impressed by what you've done and by what you're doing and by what you're going to do and how you're going to really help the world. You're one of those people. And so let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned how important family is to you. And when I first met you and we spoke, it came up a lot. And so tell me about your family. How do they inspire you?
My family has definitely shaped me in so many ways. And growing up, my dad was a very powerful figure in my life. He's a very inspirational guy. And I think one of the things that stands out to me most about him is he had so many challenges when he was growing up. And he's now this very successful business owner. My parents together, they run multiple hotels. So very successful people. And growing up, my dad actually really struggled with reading because he actually has ADHD and dyslexia. And back then it was very underdiagnosed and people didn't realize how big of an impact it truly had. And so to this day, my dad really struggles with reading, but he is one of the smartest people you will ever meet. He has amazing social skills. He's great at networking, and he never let that really stop him, even though like nowadays people will tell you, oh, like you have to go to college, you have to do this, like you have to do this. And they kind of laid that out as how to be successful. But he did none of those things. He only went to college because he actually had a basketball scholarship. But then, unfortunately, he did tear his ACL, so his scholarship got revoked. And that's when he dropped out of college and went into business with my grandfather. And they became very successful together. So that story kind of inspires me, especially because I feel like there's a lot of stress nowadays to follow this path of how to be successful. Again, like you have to go to college, you have to do this, you have to do this. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be successful, right? And in high school, I was very focused on college. I was doing 18 extracurricular activities. I was so burnt out because I thought the only way that I would be successful is going to college. And of course, like going to college is a great step to being successful, but it's not the only step. And I am in college and I love it. It's great. But I've really learned to put less pressure on myself. And in high school, I was the kid who would literally cry if I got below an A, which is like so embarrassing. I look back and I wish I could go tell my childhood self, like, it's really not that serious. It's really not that deep. And so now that I'm in college, I'm like, you know what? Like, as long as I'm doing mentally well, as long as I'm trying my best, as long as I'm happy with what I'm doing, that's all that matters. And truly, at the end of the day, you'll be successful as long as you're happy with what you're doing and you're just enjoying life. So.
Wow, those are words of wisdom. And it's so great that you had that example of your dad. And just a shout out to people with ADHD, myself included. Yeah, never discount we use this word power a lot, but the power of people with ADHD, because they're some of the most, or we're some of the most, amazing entrepreneurs ever.
Right.
And if you look at a lot of the people who have reshaped businesses or created new ones, it's pretty amazing how many people have it. Richard Branson being one, having ADHD and dyslexia at the same time. And then they're even finding out that people like Henry Ford perhaps had ADHD. So it's another way of looking at things. Absolutely. That adds a lot of color and fresh perspectives to things. And so it sounds like through your dad just kind of having to take the road less traveled, if you will, as a result of having ADHD, prepared you for actually realizing, the path that you were going down as a high achiever and just slowing down.
No, absolutely.
That's so great. Let's talk about your achievements. The one, of course, that I'm just itching to get into is your TEDx talk. Can you please recap that for us and kind of bullet point the main takeaways?
Yeah, so my TED Talk was basically about social media and how it definitely can be this place of negativity, but if you use it right, it can actually be a very powerful resource. So in it, I kind of just talk about how you can use it in a beneficial way, but also the dangers of it, which I think adults especially need to do a better job at educating about the dangers, but also encouraging for kids to use it in a positive way. And one of the things I ask the audience at the end is, if we want to make change, we have to stop this idea that social media is this horrible place. Like, stop using it, because at the end of the day, like 80% of the world uses social media. By you saying don't use it, that's not going to change anything. But what will change something is if you truly educate on the dangers, but also talk about how you can use it in a beneficial way. And kind of the 4 main points that I make on how to use it in a beneficial way is to categorize your following into 4 groups of people, which is, the first one is friends, family members, and positive acquaintances. The second one is people who align with your goals. The third one is people who inspire you. And the 4th group is entertainers, because of course, social media is an entertainment platform. And I never want to say don't use it for entertainment, because when social media was created, that was kind of the purpose. So you can definitely use it for entertainment. Just be mindful of the entertainment you're consuming.
Right. And then the more you're mindful of that, the algorithm will perform for you and keep serving those kinds of bits up for you. So you're in a more positive loop, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you give us some examples of, how did you do it? What things did you start looking at?
So my parents, they did not let me use social media for the longest time. I would literally beg them for hours and hours, like, please let me get Instagram, please let me get Snapchat. I'm so grateful that they didn't let me have any of that. I think I got Instagram, I want to say when I was in 9th grade, which I think is a pretty good age to have it. But before that, my mom did let me have Pinterest, which I think all parents should allow their kids to have some sort of social media before they have the kind of more intense ones like Instagram and Snapchat. And since I had Pinterest before any other social media, Pinterest is a very safe platform compared to a lot of the other platforms. So I kind of learned how to use it in a positive way. At that time, I was a gymnast, so I was mainly using Pinterest to find like inspirational gymnastics quotes or like make vision boards and stuff like that. So then when I did get Instagram and when I did get Snapchat, naturally, the people I would start to follow are people who were gymnasts, people who inspired me, people who motivated me. And so I think that's kind of just how I learned to use social media in a beneficial way, because that's just kind of how I started. However, I think if you start with Instagram or if you start with Snapchat, naturally teenagers are going to gravitate to more pop culture things, which is fine. But when you're young and start to gravitate towards that kind of stuff, it's very easy to fall into the negativity of that stuff, because there's a lot of social media drama. There's a lot of drama with celebrities, and actually, like, the human brain is trained to love negativity. So I think just being aware of that. And I think the more you tell kids not to do something, the more they're going to want to do it. So I think instead of saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, say you can do this, but here's boundaries I have for you. Here's expectations I have for you. And if you don't follow those boundaries and expectations, here's what could happen.
Yeah. And I think that's really wise. And, not pointing fingers or anything like that. And guilty myself on occasions, the social media, the phone, whatever you're on, it's a third parent.
Right.
Right. And, oftentimes we just don't want our kids maybe even to just be with us or just be quiet. Like if you're meeting for coffee with a couple of girlfriends, it's like, here, busy yourself on this phone or play a game or go on, whatever, go on TikTok. And that's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. I'm really curious about starting to speak in front of audiences.
Yes. 4th grade, I started running for student council and all of that. So that's kind of when I started speaking in front of audiences. And I've always loved it. I never won student council elections until I want to say like 7th grade. And I've been doing it since like 4th grade. And it never really discouraged me because maybe it's because I just loved attention as a little kid, but I loved giving speeches in front of everyone. I loved making people laugh. I loved seeing everyone smile. So.
Wow, that's awesome. So you were off to a great start with that. You were building your confidence, and then you went on to the TED Talk. But I believe you also found out what it was like to start a business, correct?
Yeah. So one day I was on Instagram and I came across this ad for this program called Beta Camp. I think it's called something else now. I believe it's called Prequel now. And they advertised themselves to be this 6-week entrepreneurship program where they paired you with mentors, and those mentors helped you create a startup in 6 weeks. And then at the end of those 6 weeks, we presented to a panel of judges. So yeah, of course, when you see an ad on social media, you should be very skeptical. But I did my research. I looked online. I looked at their social media platforms. I looked at alumni stories, and it was completely legit. So when I joined, I was actually put on a team with, I think it was 5 boys. They were great, incredibly hard workers, but we had a lot of differences in what kind of business we wanted to create. And somehow I convinced them to create a women's self-care startup. And kind of my passion for that stemmed from, again, in high school, I was very burnt out. I was not good at taking care of myself at all because, again, I was so focused on trying to get into a really good college that I wasn't really worried about my mental health at that time. And I think this was going into my senior year of high school. So this is when I kind of started to focus more on mental health. And basically what we created is a women's self-care subscription service. And we realized that one of the problems people have with self-care is they don't really know what to do for self-care. A lot of people think a face mask or a bath is going to fix your problems, which sometimes that's the only thing you have the energy to do that day. And that's great. But we did more research and we found out that in order to be the most mentally well or happy, I guess, you actually have to focus on 6 different forms of self-care. And those 6 different forms are spiritual, professional, emotional, physical, psychological, and relational. So basically what we did is we created a self-care box, and each month women would get an item for each one of the 6 areas of self-care, because it can be really overwhelming to try to focus on like all these different areas of self-care at once, but having it in one box makes it so much easier. And so, for example, for physical self-care, we'd send them a yoga mat with some like videos to try of beginner yoga routines. And for professional self-care, we would send them like a book about setting boundaries in the professional workplace and just stuff like that. And we found that it made it a lot easier for women to incorporate self-care in their busy lives, especially because it just eliminated the problem of having to like think about it.
It sounds like you did your market research. And did you beta test it?
Yeah, so we did. I believe in the 6 weeks we got, I want to say it was around 7 customers, and we got a lot of good feedback from it. The hardest thing was just kind of trying to find those customers, and they were our like friends or family members, which all businesses start like that. But yeah, we got a lot of great feedback from it, and it's definitely something I want to revisit in the future. And unfortunately, we couldn't continue with it just because we were all going off to college, navigating this really confusing time in our lives, so we couldn't spend as much energy on it that we'd like to.
Well, I have no doubt that you will either pick it up again, probably sooner than later, or, start something completely new. No doubt whatsoever. So tell us about your experience at Fordham.
Yeah, so Fordham is a great school. I love the people. I love the environment. I'm very happy there. And a lot of people hear that I'm from Colorado and they're like, why did you come all the way to New York? And in business, New York is a great place to be because, again, like I really value networking and meeting a lot of diverse people. And I guess I get that trait from my dad. And so New York, I was like, that is the perfect place to be for that because you meet so many different people. Even just on the streets, you experience so much. And I think that's just like the beautiful thing about life is experiencing different environments, experiencing different people. So I've had a lot of fun with that. And then that essay I wrote was actually for my English class. And I really, really appreciated this English class because my entire life I've really disliked reading and writing and all that. But my professor made it so that we could write about our passions and things that we're interested in. So I very much value that. But I decided to write my research paper on the negative effects of social media because so many people will talk to me about social media because of my TED Talk. And and even at the time, I was very well versed in social media, but I think you never stop learning. And so by writing this paper, I learned more about the negative effects so that I'm better at arguing the positive effects. And some of the takeaways I learned is that these social media platforms truly know what they're doing. Like there was this article I read, and I think it was about Facebook. But basically, they did like a survey on Facebook, and they basically talked about how Facebook knew how many negative effects it has and how much it hurts people's mental health, yet they don't do anything about it, which is really sad because like if you know your platform is causing harm to people, you think that you'd want to improve it and make it better. But unfortunately, these platforms do care more about money than people's well-being. So in that regard, I guess it makes sense for them not to change. And I think if I were to go back and redo that TED Talk, I think the way I delivered it, I think is very well, especially because with TED Talks, you kind of want to stay between 8 to 13 minutes just because that has shown to get the most engagement. So not a lot of time to say a lot, especially because social media is this huge topic. There's so much you could say about it. But I think the one thing I would add after doing that paper is a section where I kind of held these platforms accountable for what they were doing, because part of this paper was to come up with solutions of how these social medias can improve. And one of the solutions I came up with was they should start filtering their content based on age. So I know a lot of dating apps, actually, you have to like scan your ID to make sure you don't catfish people or to make sure you're of age to use this app. And I think if social media platforms did that, it would increase the safety of social media by a lot. For example, Snapchat, if they had an age verification process, they could implement a policy that you can only add people who are like 2 years older, 2 years younger, whatever that may be. And I think that would help with catfishing and a lot of these negative effects. Same with TikTok, same with Instagram. If they had age verification, they could filter content based on your age and what's appropriate for you to view. And I don't know why they do that. Maybe that will cause them to lose money. Maybe that will deter people from using it. Who knows? But honestly, there's so many things these social media platforms could do that they just choose not to.
Do you think that will at some point, or is it already, affecting their market share? Are people going to just start dropping off?
I don't think so, because again, like these social media platforms are very addicting. They're made to be addicting. That's why you have to be like educated on how to use them. And I think because of that, people will never stop using them. And there'll always be a new social media. Like, for example, the TikTok ban. I personally don't think TikTok will get banned, but who knows? Maybe I'll look back and be like, wow, it really did get banned. But I think if TikTok does get banned, there will be a new TikTok. I don't think it's going away. Either Instagram will become the new TikTok with their Reels feature, or someone will create a new platform.
Well, let's just hope that has a more holistic perspective. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So you're majoring in marketing, and what compels you to do that?
Yeah, so kind of my long-term goals is to be an entrepreneur, and I want to start my own business one day, hopefully in like the beauty or health and wellness field. And I think what I've learned about entrepreneurship is you can have a really, really great idea. It can be the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to market it, that business will fail. I think by choosing the path of marketing, that'll eliminate a lot of stress for me down the line.
So how would you advise somebody to start a business?
I'm actually doing internships right now with some startups, and I specifically chose startups rather than big companies because I want to learn how they kind of started, because I feel like the first step is always the hardest. Like, just getting it up and running is always the hardest part. And so I think from what I've learned, I would start with telling people close to you or around you about your business and having them support you first, getting their feedback before you go to a larger audience, and then getting started with social media like Instagram and TikTok. I think TikTok especially is great for businesses because it is so easy to get views on TikTok, whereas Instagram, it's a little bit harder. So I think if you're creating a business, the best place to start social media-wise is definitely TikTok.
Tell us a little bit about the places where you intern. Is there one in particular that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so the first one I've been doing for a while, it's with a brand called Memory. They are a greens brand, and kind of how I got an internship with them is I've been drinking their brand for, I want to say like 2 years now, and I absolutely love them. And so I emailed them a while ago, and I was like, I love your brand. I am very good at social media marketing, and I think I could help your social media a lot. And they didn't respond for a while, but then they responded like 3 months later, and they interviewed me, and they accepted me onto their team, which I was so thrilled about. I was so excited. And kind of, I just run their Instagram and their TikTok, and I make videos for them. And it's been a really great experience because I also get to talk to a lot of influencers, which I love doing because, again, I love getting to know people's backgrounds and different people's experiences. And I think I learned a lot in terms of networking from that, especially because Memory is a smaller business. And so a lot of influencers I talk to are on the smaller side. I think the thing with social media is when you get into these bigger influencers, they can be very, very fake.
Absolutely.
They care a lot about the money. I know there was a TikTok scandal a while ago with this girl named Michaela, I think, and she was advertising for a mascara brand, and she put like fake eyelashes on and claimed that like the mascara did that, when in reality she hasn't confirmed that it was fake lashes, but it was kind of very obvious. And so it's kind of unfortunate, like all these big creators who are lying about products and stuff make it really hard. But I really like talking to smaller influencers because when they reached out to Memory, they reached out because they genuinely resonated with the brand and didn't necessarily care about the money. Like I talked to this one woman, and she had an illness that very few people had. I wish I remembered what it was called, but it was a while ago. But she wanted to work with Memory because what Memory provided helped a lot with the illness she was facing, and she was able to educate people on social media about her illness and just spread awareness about it, which I think is a very beautiful thing about social media, is you learn about so much, and you learn about things that you never even thought were out there.
Mhm.
And then the second internship I am a part of is with this med spa called Embody. And I actually just started with them around a week ago. So I don't have much knowledge of what that's going to look like. But I wanted to have an internship with them because I love like cosmetics and I love the beauty industry. And so I'm kind of just in a period of my life where I'm experimenting with a bunch of different passions. And yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing those two.
That's fantastic. I don't know where you get the energy. Oh, yes, I do. You're 19. Do you consider yourself to be an influencer?
I think on a small scale, I think being an influencer is just inspiring people so I'd say like my TED Talk especially, it's almost at 100,000 views right now, which I'm thrilled about. And looking back, I just hope that inspired a lot of people. So I guess in that regard, I'd be considered an influencer. But on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, I don't think I post regularly enough to be an influencer, and just don't post content that an influencer would post.
Self-love is the heartbeat of wellness. It's the fuel that propels us forward, allowing us to conquer challenges and savor the sweetness of achievement. Rihanna. What do you think of that quote?
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. For a while, I've kind of had the mindset that if your mental health is not at 100% or close to 100%, because obviously it's really hard to be at 100%, but if your mental health is not good, you can't put energy into other things if you don't have that energy yourself. And I think thinking like that has gotten me through a lot, because there's so many extracurriculars I wanted to put energy in, and I really had to step back and be like, I want to give my full effort to this, but I can't right now because I'm not at 100%, or I'm not anywhere near 100% right now. So I think self-love is really important to be able to do the things you want to do and achieve the things you want to do.
Totally agreed. I absolutely agree with that. And, apparently some Olympic athletes would agree with that too. Remember the last Olympics? Simone Biles, she decided not to participate because she had to take care of her mental health first. She took a lot of heat for it, but I think that was gold medal worthy, honestly.
That's really hard to do, especially when there's so much pressure on you. And especially like even now, but especially at the time, she was very hot in the media. And I think that takes a lot of courage to do. And she definitely inspired a lot of young kids by doing that. So
I would agree. So walk us through your self-care regimen, maybe is the word. What do you do on the daily?
This summer especially, I've been trying to focus on self-care and trying a bunch of new things. And some of the things I've been doing recently are hot yoga. I've been really into hair care recently, so I've been learning a lot about that, and also skincare. And I think self-care truly looks different for everyone, right? Like some people enjoy face masks. Some people are like, okay, face masks are not my thing. It just really depends on who you are as a person. And especially like if you're an introvert, they get fueled by being alone. If you're an extrovert, you get fueled by being around people. So I think it really depends on the kind of person you are. But for me, I'm very into what people would call sexy self-care, face masks, bath bombs, all that stuff. When I'm having a hard day, I have like shower steamers that have essential oils that come out when you put them in the shower. So I'll just put one of those in my shower, relax, put my diffuser on in my room, listen to some music, and that does a really good job of re-energizing me.
Great. And so do you have friends and people in your life at school who support that and do that as well?
Yeah, so I think a lot of my friends are similar to me in that way. And even in college, me and my roommates would have late night like tea and talk, and we'd make each other our favorite teas, and we just talk about how our life's going so far and how our week's been and just kind of the college experience so far. And I think having people like that and having friends you can talk to really, really helps.
What do your teachers think of you? Your teachers must find you to be very impressive.
So funny you say that, because I have definitely had a very hard time with teachers, especially in high school. I'm very grateful for the school I went to because it was a charter school, and different from public schools, they had their own policies. But in high school, I really, really, again, struggled with burnout, which caused me to miss a lot of classes. My teachers got very, very frustrated because they didn't understand why I was missing these classes. And they just thought, oh, she's not interested in my class. She doesn't respect me. But it was not that at all. It was just, I was not in a good mental state. But once I started to explain my situation, they started to understand a little bit more. And when they realized like all the stuff I was doing in the background, I think they really started to understand my struggles and understand that like I was not ignoring them. I was not going because I was dealing with my own things. And once they started to understand that, they started to be very, very supportive, which I'm so grateful for. And I was able to do a lot of my school from home and still ended up with like a 4.5 GPA. School is different for everyone. There are people who work so hard at school, study all the time, and can't get the grades they want. And there's some people who are just good at studying, good at school, and just know how to get through it. And I was kind of one of those people. I mean, I am a smart person, but I will say I am not textbook smart. Like standardized tests, I will say right now, I'm so glad my year was test optional because I did very, very poorly on all my standardized tests. But then I had very good grades in school. And that's just because like I knew how to get through school. Like I knew what teachers wanted. I knew what I had to do to get that grade. And I just did it. So I think school is very unfair to a lot of people. And it doesn't define how smart someone is. And my dad's a great example of that.
He's a great example of that. Because people with ADHD, it's all about the workarounds.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really hard. I mean, obviously your dad is super smart. Okay, let's just say I'm really smart, but you don't feel that way especially back when I was a kid in grade school and high school, the 60s and 70s. When you got to speak in class, it was because you were answering a question, you got selected, and girls sat with their hands folded on the desk. So many of us had ADHD, but who would have known? There was nothing going on in terms of research or diagnosis. So yeah, the workarounds. But now, I mean, today, for example, you did something very brave. You spoke your truth. And then your teachers recognized that and said, oh, and that changed your experience.
Yeah. And I think that's like the most important thing. I was so frustrated at first when I was like, why don't they understand me? But then I was like, well, they don't understand me because I haven't told them. Like, naturally, they're going to think I'm just ditching class. Naturally, they're going to think I'm lazy because I didn't communicate that. And once I did, it got a lot better. And I think on the other side, too, one of the things I learned is to be more patient with people and more empathetic because you never know what someone's going through. And you can make assumptions from the outside, but truly, you don't know what's going on in the background.
Right. Yeah, you never know. Everybody's got a story. Absolutely everybody. And how wonderful that you know that at this point in your life. Hear the chime? They can only mean one thing. It's time for your moment of zen and awesome activity. Let us begin. Breathe in. Breathe out. Take a sip of tea. Here we go. This exercise is really, really enlightening. It's about mapping your social media influence and putting you on a healthy path. So I want you to grab a notebook and pen, pencil, crayons, whatever you want to use. And I'll go slowly. You can rewind at your leisure. So I'm going to start with step 1. And this is about reflecting on your goals. What do you want to accomplish over the next year or two? Personally and professionally. Think about that and then write it down. Okay, you're off to a great start. Here's number 2. Identify influential people. This could be anybody. This could be celebrities, influencers, mentors, anybody you admire, who's admirable in your eyes. And think about, why do you admire them? Is it something like their positivity, creativity, activism or expertise in a particular area, yeah, take a minute for that and maybe use your own little bullet points, whatever you need to do. Okay, we're on to step 3. List inspirational subjects. And by that, I mean things you're passionate about or want to learn more about, like hobbies or causes or industries, areas of personal development. See what you can come up with there. Now, step 4 is super interesting. It's where you're going to analyze positive attributes. So you're going to write down the positive qualities of each person and subject that you listed. Okay, go ahead. Now you're going to connect the attributes to the goals. So how can these attributes help you reach your own aspirations? So think about specific actions or behaviors that these people inspire. Connect the attributes to the goals. 6, and this is about creating social media strategy, one that has a positive influence. So let's start with content, okay? Write down the word content and think about this. So what will you create or share that reflects these attributes you've put down? Now write down engagement. So how will you engage with others on social media in a positive way? And finally, write down the word impact. Impact. What impact do you hope to make on your social media presence? Really think about how you want to present yourself and whether that's authentic. Because if you're sort of spewing things you think people want to hear or that will get the most likes and follow, that's really performative. It's not really connecting. Well, let me put it this way. You're not making your essence, your presence. Are you authentic? Because you can't really help people too much unless you're authentic. Last step, step 7. Here we go. Here's where the rubber meets the road. This is where you commit to action. So you want to set specific, achievable goals. And you could decide to post a certain number of positive messages per week on social media. Set specific, achievable goals. Post just a certain number of positive messages per week. Follow and engage with accounts that align with your interests and hopefully best interests. And then start conversation, topics that you care about. Your conversations should attract healthy people or people who want to be healthy. Okay, great job. Look at you being all strategic and stuff. I hope that this has sparked some ideas about how you can make a meaningful impact online and how you can really harness the power of social media for good. Now, back to the show. So, you are a very forward-looking person. Let's look at tomorrow. What's your tomorrow looking like? But also, let's talk about the next phase in your life. For example, when you graduate, and then let's look beyond that. What do you think you'll be doing, and how would you like the world to look?
I think in the future, again, my goal is to start my own self-care business or something in the women's empowerment field as well. I think if it were to be picture perfect, I would have my own hair care line and hair care brand. But again, life changes and challenges will get thrown at you. You'll get knocked off path. And I think one of the most valuable things I actually learned from giving my TED Talk is how to be adaptable. Because so with the TED Talk, we had 3 trainings. And the first day I walk in, the director comes in like 10 minutes later, and the first thing she says is that there's only one rule when giving a TED Talk, and that's that you cannot memorize your talk. And so I freaked out. I was like, what do you mean I can't memorize my talk? Like every speech I've given in the past were all memorized speeches. And so when she said this, I was shocked. I was scared. I was anxious. Like, I had so many emotions running through my head. But then she explained it and she said, see, when you memorize something, something could happen in the audience. Someone could shine their light at you. Someone could make a weird noise. And if it's memorized, you could completely freeze. You could completely forget what you're saying. And you never want that to happen, especially on a stage with an audience that big. But if you're so knowledgeable in your topic that no matter what happens, you can keep talking, then that'll be more powerful. Because she made the example, like, someone could say something to you in the lobby and you could go up on stage and you could talk about that experience. And although she was talking about it in regards to the TED Talk, it changed my perspective kind of on life, because I'd always been the type of person to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, and that's the plan. And then once I heard that, I started to realize that when you have such a solid plan like that, and something shakes you, you face some challenge, it is so easy to get thrown off path. However, if you just have kind of a loose vision for what your future is going to look like, and something throws you off path, you're just like, okay, no big deal. I'll adjust, I'll make change, and just kind of adjust my plans, but still reach that end goal.
I think she gave you terrific advice, because I come from a theater background. Both my parents were actors. And, to be in a play, you have to remember your lines, but you've got to be agile. Otherwise, you're just going to freeze up. So you need to really be tapped into your character and the essence of the story to be a really effective actor, I think. And it sounds very familiar, what you're saying. So on the topic of marketing, we know branding figures into that as well. Here's your challenge, okay? In a sentence or two, give us your pitch. What is your personal brand? What sets you apart from the others, even though your competitors might be delivering the exact same product based on who you are and what your values are? How do you convince people that on a shelves and shelves of millions of products that are hair care products, for example?
So I think when it comes to selling a product, it's very important to be authentic and understand why you're doing it. Because a lot of people can see right through fake branding or like very fake advertising. But if you are genuinely very passionate about what you do and you know why you're doing it, people will see that. For example, like hair care, I'm very passionate about it because my grandma and my mom would put oil in my hair and we'd bond over all of that. And so that's what created my passion. And I think when I do create a hair care brand, I already have the name for it picked out and everything. I want it to be called It's Genetics, but like in air quotes, because a lot of people say that, oh, like your hair's so nice because you have good genetics. And I was like, yes, a part of that is true. I do have great hair genetics, but I also have really good hair because my mom and my grandma took care of it from a very young age. And my ancestors took care of their hair from a very young age. And so I think when you really align with your brand's mission, your audience sees that and feels more compelled to buy your product.
Absolutely. I agree. And, I always say that a brand story told from the heart inspires people to become part of its unfolding.
Absolutely.
Right? They want to participate, in your story, plain and simple. That's how you get people to believe in a product, but it has to be authentic. Absolutely. I love your backstory. You've got it, girl. You know what to do. These will be my last questions, I promise. What advice would you give to keep things positive, to get the benefits out of maybe technology instead of the harms?
For elementary aged kids, I would say avoid technology. Not avoid, but limit for sure. I think for all age groups, limit, especially for young kids. Like, I think it's important that they just be kids, experience going outside, experience hanging out with your friends. So I think as for technology with them, they should really not focus on that yet. I want to say I started using computers in school around 3rd or 4th grade. and they just like taught us the basics. Like they had us create emails and things like that, which I don't think was very necessary. But I think like an introduction into technology is good. But I think for younger children, it's important that they just experience life without technology first. And then as you start to get into middle school and high school, that's when it's good to incorporate more technology use.
Mm-hmm. And what about junior high and high school?
I think for high schoolers and that age group, it's really important to not fall into the toxicity of technology and social media, especially because when you're that age, you're so focused on everyone liking you and being popular and just that kind of stuff. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, honestly, none of that matters at all. I had a really, really hard time in middle school just because the school I went to, the kids there were a lot more mature than I was. And I was very, very sheltered. And so I never really got along with any of them and was so afraid that people didn't like me. People thought I was different. So then when I moved schools and went into high school, going into it, I was like, okay, I'm going to get people to like me. I'm going to be popular. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to change myself so people like me. And I did. I did my freshman year of high school. I had a huge friend group, and generally they were all really great people, and I did have a lot of fun. But I wish I didn't change myself in order to fit the like popular standard. And I think I learned a lot from that. And I don't necessarily regret it because, again, I'm a believer that everything you go through, everything you experience shapes the person you are today. And I eventually did learn, I want to say around my junior year of high school, I started to learn that other people's opinions don't really matter. You are you're the only person who has experienced you 100%. You know all your experiences. You have to live with yourself daily. So really do what you want. Like, don't care what other people think. Don't do something because you think other people will like you more. Genuinely, just do what you want. Okay, so there's two quotes that really stick out to me that people told me. The first is, you can't expect someone to understand you when they haven't experienced the things you've experienced. And when I heard that, I was like, I stopped trying to explain myself to everyone because at the end of the day, they'll never understand because they never experienced everything you experienced. And then the second thing was someone asked me, they were like, what is your goal in life? And I said, well, I just want to be happy. And they were like, okay, well, if you live each day doing things that make you happy, in the end, you will be happy. And when they said it like that, I was like, wait, like that is so true. Like not every day is going to be a good day. Not every day is going to be happy, but you can find happiness in every day. There's something little that you can find happiness in. And if you think about that every day, at the end of the day, you're going to be happy. And it's such a simple way to think about it. And it relieves so much stress and so much pressure. And so hearing those two things really changed my perspective.
So what about young adults like yourself?
For young adults, I would say just experience life. Experience different things, learn about new things, try new restaurants, socialize with people you didn't think you would socialize with. Because at the end of the day, like the experiences you have really shape you who you are. And you can read about people in a textbook. You can read about people online. Having face-to-face connections with people and really sitting down and getting to know other people is going to benefit you way more than reading about them online, reading about them in a textbook, and just things like that. So honestly, my biggest piece of advice would just be to experience life, try new things, figure out what you're passionate about. And again, like my mom would always make this analogy when I was younger. I don't remember the context she was making this analogy in, but she'd always say this, and she'd say, when we were young, we liked Barbie dolls and whatnot, and now that we're older, we like clothes and shopping and all that. So kind of your passions throughout life are always going to change. And what's really powerful is to look back on that and see how much you've grown and how many different things you experienced that made you the person you are today.
How about parents? What advice do you have for parents?
For parents, I would say to just try to understand your kid. And I know that's a really, really hard, like genuinely being a mom, being a dad, is one of the hardest things ever. My mom always told me growing up, she'd be like, there's no book written on how to raise Eva. There's no book written on how to raise Ishan. That's my brother. There's books on how to raise kids, but there's no books on how to raise a specific kid. And so, like, parents are always learning. And my parents, they used to be very, very strict with me growing up. And that's because they cared. They came from India. They didn't really experience the US. And so it's very scary to raise children in an environment they were just learning about themselves. And they did a wonderful job. I'm so grateful for them. But they were very, very strict when I was young. And that sometimes put a really bad effect on my mental health because, again, like, I wanted to be like other kids. I wanted to do things that other kids were doing, but I wasn't able to do that because my parents didn't allow it. And I look back and I'm very grateful they didn't allow me to do a lot of the things I wanted to do. But then as I grew older, they saw the challenges I was facing, and they really sat down with me and wanted to understand me. And so we had that conversation and both of our perspectives changed. I learned how to understand my parents more and understand that they've never been parents before. They're learning and trying their best. And then my parents also learned that to have like a little bit more empathy and to understand my feelings as well. And now, like, we have a great relationship. I literally tell them everything. And we're at the dinner table the other day, but something came up about how a lot of kids like lie and try to manipulate their parents and stuff like that. And my parents were like, one thing I really appreciate about Eva is like, she'll always tell the truth, even if it's like something really bad. And when I was younger, if my parents asked me something, I would never have told them the truth if it was bad. But now, because they understand me, I understand them, I know they're a safe place. If they were to ask me something, I feel comfortable like telling them openly and having a conversation with them about it. And I think once parents really sit down and try to have those conversations with their kids and really understand them, that makes the relationship healthier for both parties.
How wonderful. I hope you're working on a book because I want to read it. So let's talk about one more group. And that group is sort of an unrecognized one when it comes to tech. And that's elders. What advice would you give to elders?
Honestly, I think just learn about it. Ask for help when you need it. Like my grandparents, they are such sweethearts. And every time me and my cousins go over to their house, we'll like give them phones or like technology to try. And they'll like ask us a bunch of different questions about it. And it's such a good bonding experience, and it's just so sweet. And so for like those elderly people, really talk to your grandkids, talk to people you have in your life, like just learn about it. Especially like looking back, it's cool to see how much the world has developed since you were younger. Like I know when I'm older, I'll definitely look back and be like, wow, like the world has changed so much, and that's a beautiful thing.
I want to close with a quote that we opened with. Now, in your TED Talk, you did an add-on. So can you repeat the quote with your bin at the end?
Yeah, it's, nothing of me is original. I'm a combined effort of everyone I've ever known and the content I've surrounded myself with.
Yay! How great is that? How great is that? Thank you, Eva. You've given us so much to think about and so many fun things to do. I can't wait to see what your next innovation is. Can't wait to see your next talk. And for those of you who missed it in the beginning, you can find Eva's TEDx talk on YouTube. So go search her name, Eva Amin, A-M-I-N, and prepare to be impressed. Great episode. Thanks, Eva. If you like what you hear, come back and check out some of our other episodes. And be sure to like us and subscribe to the podcast. Tell all your friends about this really cool podcast called Digital Sanity. Remember, options control sanity. Later, gorgeous.